Well, I would say, and this Eric Schmidt, who is the head of Google, was asked by Tom Friedman, who writes for the New York Times, like, you know, if you guys at Google are hiring, you know, the best engineers, et cetera, so what's somebody who is taking arts or literature or philosophy, what do you do? If you take communications, or you're a liberal arts person, let's say you're a liberal arts from communications, okay, let's just make it a little broader. If you're only a liberal arts person, you have no place at Google. But if you're a liberal arts person who has taken the time to learn Google Analytics, by the way, that's free. They will train you for free. You have enormous value because you become part of the team in which your orientation adds value to the team because you're not just a tech person. So it's kind of like you're the, you know, when you cook, anybody here a foodie? Okay. If you cook only one ingredient, it's pretty boring, isn't it? If you have all tech people together, it's like a big mashed potato that has no ingredient. But if you start to add some spices and herbs, etc., you get a really good mix. They're looking for people like you because you don't think the same way. Now, the way we source system, or Google Analytics, or IBM, or Microsoft, and it's not that hard, but you have to make the effort. So the answer is if you're just a very narrow vertical, it's very tough to have value. If you are coming with your perspective, but you understand the language of technology, you don't, it's like understanding that how a car functions, you don't have to build the car, you don't have to build the technology, you have enormous value. And I would position myself that way, and don't be afraid to go to the more progressive, innovative companies, because they really need good communicators.
For example, I kind of see myself as in the ocean, and I'm in a job where sometimes I'll catch a really great wave and I'll be surfing, doing a great project, and then I'll crash into crazy waters and it'll be a job that I hate. And I feel like I can't compete to collaborate because the business is so small. Would you suggest that I stay in it and try to make the best experience, or try to admit that maybe I'm not the person they need?
The average tenure today is 2 years. At least in your generation, right? My generation, we were hoping for 10, 15, 20 years. Your generation's 2 years. So if you're not locked in, let me use a bad analogy. If you were in a bad relationship, wouldn't you want to get out of that and try to get to somebody else? It is worse than a bad relationship when you're in a job that you're not at your age, in your stage of life, where you're not growing, you're not being nurtured, and you're not learning so that you can become more marketable, more valuable. So it's not whether you like the people. I work with a lot of people I don't necessarily like, but we work really well together because we're adding value to one another. So it's not a question of being buddies. It's not the same as being friends. But are you learning? Are you growing? Are you being challenged? And if you can't answer yes to any of those things, you get out and find another opportunity and recognize, you know, it's not that you have to say, oh, how did I fail? It's, where do I need to go next to add more value? And this is going to sound so harsh, so forgive me. You all have very good friends from high school and from college, and you want to all hang out together and you want to be buddies the rest of your life. And I treasure the people that I went to high school and college with. I still am in contact with them. The boys and the girls, we still email each other. The girls email us dirty jokes, and they're all grandmothers, right? So we're still like 15 together. But I had to consciously grow from the people who were like me to people who are not like me. And I've always done anything good in collaboration with others, and they brought me up. And so I can not answer your specific, but I can say, if there's a doubt, you shouldn't hesitate to look for something else. Somebody else. I covered a lot of stuff, so you must have. Are you finding that this is matching some reality that you're familiar with? Yes.
I have a question, I'm thinking about my personal experience now. I've worked in a lot of service industry, my whole growing up, but this is not something that I want to do long term. But I'm having a hard time finding that job in between, hopping from doing one to the other. And just kind of like, you know, I don't want to bring a resume that shows like, okay, you've been a bartender, you've been this and that, but then you want to now work at like a tech job or something like that, you know, it doesn't.
Hey, there are a lot of baristas that end up at Google, you know. You'd be amazed. I first recognize that people are more and more working on projects. So the idea, gee, I can't show anything less than 3 years in a full-time job, which was true historically, is now not, at least in the Bay Area. What projects have you worked on, and what did you learn, and what can you bring, is an important part of this. So don't think of it as I have to have a certain longevity and a title, and I need a full-time job. I could, for most of my career, and a lot of times I gave the talk here, I had a layered career. I was consulting, I was writing, I was teaching, I was doing many things simultaneously to create what would be a layered career. And sometimes my consulting would be more prominent, sometimes my teaching would be more prominent. So the advice I would give you is think of yourself much more as a verb than a noun. You know, I'm not thinking of myself as a teacher, a consultant, a marketing and advertising, a writer, a author, you know, mentor. I mentor, I teach, I write, I consult, I project manage. In other words, I have a whole range of skill sets, and if you can start to approach it that way, you'll have more courage to go out and do a really cool project, but it might not be a full-time job. And or even take, while you're working on your regular job, take some projects so it'll get you to your next level. Yeah.
Just to go off of what you just said, I'm in the service industry, and for my internship, I got one with a restaurant hiring app downtown, and it's a startup, so I got to like, but when I interviewed for the internship, you know, they asked me why I was interested, and of course one is I need one for this course, but I got it before this started, and I told them the same thing, like, oh, I work in the service industry, and I don't know what, like, I need the experience. Otherwise, like, hi, I'm a server, and I have been for 7 years, and, you know, so it was very helpful.
Let me just build off what you just said. Let's say you've been a server in a restaurant. And now you're going for a job that is what we would call a tech job. There are aspects to being a server in a restaurant in terms of connecting with people and understanding how to make how to be in service to other people that you have learned. You have a sixth sense. And that you can take that and again translate it not, oh, I was a server in a restaurant, so, you know, I did that same thing over and over. No. Let me tell you about some of the people that I dealt with as a server in which I learned how to work with individuals who have special needs, or I worked to make people happy and to create an ambiance for people. In other words, take it not to the function that you did, but take it to what you learned that's applicable to a situation where you know it's going to have value. There's almost no job that you can't say that you have learned something if you apply yourself and try to add something to that job. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. No, and I've enjoyed, you know, working in the industry because I do learn a lot and how to interact with people, but it is that a really intimidating feeling to be like, oh, like how am I going to go in there, like.
There's a wonderful
So
woman named
different.
Margarita Cuhys, who I used to bring to San Francisco State, who's considered to be one of the most influential women in Silicon Valley. She's a fellow at Stanford. She is involved in some very, very sophisticated behavioral technology stuff. She's all over the world now. She's, you know, was head of the Hispanic network, and she came from a Mexican American and an Indian family in which nobody else in her family went to college. And she went to Stanford, and she said, you fake it until you make it. Which I could never say with the straight, you know, I couldn't say it the way she can say it. She was feeling as an imposter most of her life, and she faked it until she made it, and she is today, you know, she became an engineer, she is as accomplished as anybody, but she had to get over her own inhibition because of her limited horizons in her background, or the kinds of things professor couldn't even understand what she was doing, let alone, you know. So I use that as an example in that those are people, now, you don't have to be a Margarita, you can be, although if you looked at people like that and said, wow, that woman, look at what she did, and I am inspired by her. That's a wonderful way of looking at people who have transcended the limitations of their background. That's kind of what I tried to say. I had to transcend the limitations of my background, not deny my background. I had to transcend my background in order to be able to do what I wanted to do. And had I stayed with what was either easy or likely, I could not have done that. So I'm encouraging you to take calculated risks for your happiness, basically. Maybe we take one or two and then, yes?
As comm majors, you know, we learn vital skills about human communication, but to translate it into fields like business or tech or things like that, you did mention like getting into projects and, you know, using that to build up your skills, but how does one create opportunities to have short-term projects like that, or find opportunities to be able to, you know, pursue those projects and then use that for our resume?
Great question, and you know, there are opportunities to work as a nonprofit volunteer in which you could work on projects, service learning projects while you're in school, and then out of school you can work in associations, you can work at trade shows, you could work in the nonprofit world in terms of hands-on stuff, or work for the United Way in doing a project, and it gives you the opportunity then to say, I worked on a real project with a real client, with a real result, and you have, most importantly, a recommendation from that person that you worked with that goes on your LinkedIn. And now you have, what you've done is you've constructed a project that enables you to have a simulated career experience. Does that make sense? And that's, by the way, that's what I did at Holt. That's the future that I see for myself, is creating projects, mostly with high-tech projects where they're working with platforms for people to work on a platform that they can be mentored by real industry people and get that kind of experience, because you're locked out of most really, really good jobs because their recruitment is very narrow. So I'll give you, because Rick asked the question, it'd be very difficult for you to get a job at IBM. IBM has 400,000 employees. They're looking to have 100,000 employees. They're by attrition. It's too big of a company, right? And companies like Google are tiny compared to, or Apple are tiny compared to IBM. So getting a job at IBM or Apple, for example, is hard. But they are a galaxy of vendors and partners and people who work with their systems, and so you could work for an IBM. So if you did an IBM project and you're not going to get hired by IBM, maybe there's a partner that is our client that will look on your resume and you did a project with IBM. That's a simulation of an IBM job. You're now credible in that world of where you fit. Does that make sense? And it doesn't have to be a high-tech company. It can be anything. Somebody else, and then... Well, I hope that you would be less anxious. Did I succeed? For those of you who stayed, are you a little less anxious? Okay. So we did what we wanted to do. And it's going to be very exciting moving forward. I can tell you that everything you hear about, you know, there are no jobs, it's baloney. If you go out there and you are mastering your own fate and you are navigating your own career, work with people that you believe are good people, and they will bring you in on projects, and they will open doors for you, and you don't have to look at it as you're doing it yourself. Thank you.